Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be talking about the best of Cirque Colors. A lot of my feelings around Cirque have changed, especially over the last year. I'm still trying to give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that they will improve as a brand moving forward. But for now, the best that I can do is, if you are interested in Cirque, is to talk about what my favorites are, what these standouts are, the ones that I think are worth the price point. But of course, I will also be talking about some disappointments that I've experienced, just like the other installments in my best of series. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So normally I start with the nail essentials, which mean base coats, top coats, any other kind of products. And when it comes to Cirque, I definitely have been lucky enough to try a lot of their essentials. And actually when it comes to their base and top coats, it's just easier to talk about the ones that I don't like. So when it comes to the base coats, the one that I wouldn't recommend is their peel off base coat. Definitely take this with a grain of salt because I am not the most experienced when it comes to using peel off base coats. The only one that I've ever used before is the Unt Global or Unt, and I've had really great results with that one. But yeah, the Cirque one wasn't really a fan. I just found that it was very, very thin. And I don't know if I'm supposed to do 2 coats with a peel off base because they already take a longer time to dry down compared to regular base coats. So maybe that's the other issue, that I just didn't let it dry down long enough, because I definitely did not get a clean peel off kind of moment. It was a little messy and gummy. So again, it totally could be user error where I'm just way too impatient for a peel off base coat, but yeah, I just didn't like that one and wanted to put it out there. And when it comes to their top coats, the only one that I wouldn't really recommend is their matte top coat because, as I'm sure you can guess, I don't find it matte enough. I definitely don't wear matte nails like super often, but when I do, I want it to have negative shine. I don't want it to have this like semi-matte sort of finish where it's like satiny, and I feel like that's exactly what Cirque's matte top coat dries down to. So it is kind of a cool effect if that's what you're going for, but if you're looking for a very matte kind of finish, I don't think you're gonna get that with this one. You definitely will have a better experience with other brands. And when it comes to their other base and top coats, I do really like them. I've had great experiences with both their ridge filling base coat, their long lasting base coat, and even their top coat is one that I really, really like. I just have a hard time really recommending it since it is pricey, especially for the size, but I guess that's just true for Cirque in general, like even when it comes to their polishes. But I feel like polishes at least can be a bit more unique with like their colors or finishes or formulas, but base and top coats you can pretty much get like anywhere else. So, if you are like one polish away from getting free shipping, I would say maybe throw in a top coat. But the one nail essential that I would recommend is their crystal nail file. I always get questions whenever I talk about any kind of crystal file, especially from like other brands, because I mention I find the other brands to be a little too rough for my nails because my nails are just a lot thinner. And Cirque has their own crystal nail file, and I don't know what the grit is exactly, nor do I know the ones for other brands, but I just know from experience, like actually using it on my nails, the Cirque one just feels so much more gentle, but it still does a really great job at shaping, taking off length, whatever. So I just really love this one. I cannot stress enough that this is the crystal file that I reach for time and time again, even though I still have the other ones. Those are all just like my backup ones, but this is the one that I always reach for. I talked about it, I'm pretty sure, in my nail care routine video with like my favorite products and essentials. This is the file that I would recommend. So getting into their polishes, I want to start with the sheers and jellies category since I think that's what Cirque really dominates. You might remember earlier this year I did this massive almost hour-long video swatching all of Cirque's jellies and sheers. So definitely feel free to check out that video if you want to see my review of all of the other jellies. Because they have over 50 of them, it's really hard to narrow down my favorites. But starting with the sheers, the top one that I would always recommend is Chiffon. This is just my go-to sheer pink. As you can see, I'm already halfway down the bottle, and this is like my 5th or 6th bottle at this point. I just find it to be such a beautiful, flattering, peachy pink kind of sheer jelly base that's like a little bit buildable, obviously if you do 2 or especially 3 coats, but my preference is just wearing this in 1 coat for a nice wash of pink color. And I find that it's like the perfect shade for me. I find it really flattering, and it's just a great base for negative space nail art. This is definitely going to be an essential for me and my collection. There's just something so beautiful about this specific shade of pink. In a similar vein, I have Kismet, and this one came out earlier this year in, I believe, the Good Vibrations collection, which was the first collection of the year. So wild to think about. But this is such a subtle wash of color. I think it's described as like a grayed out lavender. There's barely a hint of purple in here. And I know, I remember when this came out, a lot of people were like, this is giving nothing. But there's something about that I love so much. If you aren't familiar with me and my channel, at some point you might hear me say like, I have stained nails, I don't like the look of them, even though I know it is completely normal with how often we are polishing our nails. Like I said, I like doing negative space nail art, and so having like super stained nails isn't the cutest for me personally, and usually chiffon is enough to kind of, you know, give me a nice wash of color. But I really have grown to love Kismet so much because of its like specific lightly purple kind of tinted base, because it's just the perfect shade to counteract the staining that I do have. And so it just gives my nails this really fresh look that's basically like your nails but better. So I know that's not for everybody. I can see so many people like rolling their eyes over this shade, but if you're a fan of just having like a really clean kind of manicure, I feel like this is such a good one to have. So getting into the actual jelly polishes now, I definitely had a hard time narrowing it down because, like I mentioned, they just have so many colors available, which is great. I definitely love the variety they have, the subtle differences in their undertones or just saturation. And obviously it can be so overwhelming when it comes to choosing which shade you want. So hopefully the bigger video that I did on my jellies earlier this year will be helpful for you to decide on the color that you like. But when it comes to my recommendations, I wanted to include 3 of my top favorites that I feel like are really perfect, especially for beginners getting into jellies. The first one that I have is Morningtide, and it is just this absolutely beautiful, elegant shade of cornflower blue. I would say this is one of my top used jellies. I don't know if you could really tell here, but it's almost halfway done, and this is easily one that I would repurchase. It is just such a beautiful color, definitely more on the unique side when it comes to some jellies that, you know, are on the market. And I would say that this one, along with the 2 others I'm going to share, are more beginner friendly because these definitely have a little bit more of a milky, buildable kind of jelly base where it borders on being like a crelly, because to me a true jelly polish is definitely very glassy and translucent. So no matter how many coats you do, you're still gonna see through to your nail line. But Cirque has some jellies that are a little bit more milky, so they just have a bit more coverage and your nail line is a little bit more obscured. So I feel like this is definitely a great option for that if you're not the biggest fan of visible nail line, but you do want like that subtle, soft squishiness that a jelly offers. I feel like this is just the top one I would recommend, mainly because I'm just a sucker for this color. But yeah, it is super gorgeous. The next one that I have is Lavender Sky, and this one actually came out in the same collection as Morningtide. So that whole collection, I mean, it's not really around anymore, but It was beautiful, so up my alley. I especially loved these two together because they just blend so beautifully. And I especially think this is a really great option if you think Kismet is just not purple enough. If you wanted something that has a little bit more color to it, this is a great one to wear in one coat for a subtle wash of color that, you know, can counteract some staining, but it does build up beautifully on its own as well. And of course with jellies, like, you know, they're sheer enough that you can do these layering like jelly sandwiches with them. They really are so versatile, and I just think this is another color that is so pretty and definitely stands out. And the last jelly that I have is Jade Jelly, and this is another solid one that I feel like everybody needs. But again, it could just be, you know, personal preferences when it comes to colors. Like obviously if you don't love greens, you might not like this shade, but I just think it is so beautiful. I love how soothing and soft this shade of green is. It really is like a perfect jade kind of color. And again, just like the other two shades, I feel like this one has a little bit of that milky formula. So it does build up to provide a little bit more coverage and obscure your nail line if you're not the biggest fan of that, but it just gives this really soft, squishy effect on your nails. And obviously with this being called Jade Jelly, it is perfect to use for any kind of jade nail art, which I think is so beautiful. In general, I feel like Cirque does a lot of greens, but they do them so well, and this one I cannot recommend enough. So again, when it comes to their other jellies, generally I really love them. I feel like they have really fantastic formulas. The only downside is that a number of them do still come with these skinny brushes, which are not my favorite. I know some people definitely do prefer skinny brushes because they have like itty bitty nails, but when it comes to a jelly kind of finish, I think a paddle brush would help the application so much more, where it's just a lot more even coverage and not as streaky or patchy. The good news is that on Cirque's website, every product will have like that little bubble in the corner that says if it contains a wide brush or not. And I'm pretty sure Cirque still sells their replacement brushes, so it would be a good time to pick any up during their sale. But yeah, I haven't really been disappointed by a jelly before. The only other thing that I will mention about the jellies is that a lot of their darker colors don't look as dark on the nail as they do on the bottle. So that's one thing. If you are expecting like a super dark inky blue from Indigo Jelly, for example, it's not going to quite look like that. Even formula wise, I feel like a lot of the darker jellies for some reason are even more sheer than like these three lighter ones that I shared. So I find it especially true for some of those darker jellies to have that really glassy, translucent kind of effect, where even if you do 3, 4, 5 coats, you are not going to get full coverage with them. I mean, the whole point with jellies is that you aren't getting full coverage to begin with. But like I said, there are some jellies that do provide a little bit more coverage. So again, I would highly recommend checking out that video because you can see the collages at the end of just how full coverage they can look, especially on my longer nails. I feel like that's so much easier to see with my visible nail line. I know at this point, a couple of other brands have slowly been introducing jellies to their catalogs, which I am excited to see, but hands down, Cirque definitely has the best variety when it comes to colors. So if there is a color that you are interested in, Cirque probably already has it. Or if you've seen any of my other reviews when other jelly polishes come out, I often try to recreate the jelly using like pre-existing shades that I had. So there's definitely a lot of potential and versatility with whatever you pick up. So moving on to their magnetics, as you can see, I only have one polish here, and I guess it's because I don't really love Cirque's magnetics. They are just a bit more on the jelly leaning side and a little too plain for my taste, where they only have a magnetic shimmer. I know a lot of people do prefer that and don't want all this extra sparkle and hollow and whatnot, so these could be a great option if you just want a straight up magnetic polish. And because they lean on the more jelly side, they actually magnetize really easily that makes them like one of the better magnetic formulas in my opinion. And if anything, I think the ones that do really stand out are their multi-chrome magnetics. So the one that I have here is Fool's Paradise from the recent Delusion collection. I just really loved the colors in this one. It just has this really pretty berry kind of base with this multi-chrome magnetic shimmer that shifts from this red that you see head on to green in extreme angles, and it just looks so cool and so shifty. I feel like the multi-chrome aspect is just what makes them a lot more unique, but like I said, these do magnetize super easily, especially if you prefer doing the velvet effect. I think that's where the magnetics really shine from them. So moving on to shimmers, this might be surprising that I only have 3 because like I always say, shimmers are my favorite finish, and I especially loved the shimmer formula from Cirque. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of them have been retired, unless I'm just confusing what is currently sold out on their website, but it's under their We Mix Too Much sale tab. And from what I remember, the previous years when they've done a We Mix Too Much sale, it's usually to get rid of the products in the end and like, you know, make room in their inventory for new things. So I'm not sure exactly what has been retired or not. But yeah, obviously a lot of other brands have also introduced very similar finishes to this dainty hollow shimmer combination that Cirque has that I feel like they're known for. And obviously there's a lot of overlap with some similar colors with other brands too. So I wanted to pick some more standout kind of shades. The first one that I have is Anchors Away. And this one I think I shared in my mermaid core video earlier in the summer. And I remember seeing so many comments just being like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. I feel like this is just an older kind of Cirque shade because I don't know when it came out, but it's one that I remember picking up after seeing Walker wear this in one of her videos, and she was making this video like years ago. So it's an older polish that I feel like a lot of people just forgot existed in a way. So I wanted to highlight it because it is just absolutely beautiful. It has this almost cornflower kind of base color with this really pretty glowy green shimmer that shifts to this like peachy pink in extreme angle. And obviously it has this dainty hollow sparkle. It is just such a pretty finish. It is a little bit on the pearly side, but not too bad. I think if you do like a thicker coat or just overwork the polish, it does look a little bit more brushstrokey. But yeah, I just think this color is so pretty and so worth picking up, especially because, you know, not to like encourage FOMO, but I'm just thinking this is an older polish, and so they likely will phase it out at some point because I feel like they've gotten rid of so many like classic shades that I never would have expected them to phase out, if that makes sense. So just, you know, consider this, put this on your radar, whether it's for Black Friday or just a future sale. These next 2 polishes are also ones that I would consider standouts, but these are limited edition. So, you know, again, I'm not trying to like encourage FOMO, but I'm just saying these are still around for now, so I would highly recommend them while they're on sale. I feel like this first one should be no surprise. It is Flamingo from the California Dreamin' collection. I am just feral over this pink. It just does something to my brain that I can't really explain. I feel like whenever I put this on, I just like, I can feel my pupils dilating because I am in love with this color. It is just such a beautiful neon pink with this really pretty blue kind of shimmer that is on the more subtle side, but it provides this like subtle sort of glow, and obviously it has that same dainty hollow sparkle that I'm a big fan of. I just love this so much. I cannot recommend this enough, especially if you are a pink lover. This is such a beauty. Easily one of my favorite polishes that they have like ever put out. And the last one that I have here is Tart, which was from the Twisted Tea Party collection earlier in the spring. This one is a shimmer graphic, so it kind of has that same like base shimmer formula as the first 2 shades, but this one has a lot more of that holographic glitter. I would say this one also has a little bit more of a jelly base too, which I think is kind of common in their shimmer graphics, but we are just back with another green from Cirque that I love. They just do these like brighter lime kind of neon greens so well. well. I really have so many favorites from them, but they're just like not around anymore. And so this is another favorite from this year that still is around, so I wanted to recommend it. It really is just this like electric green apple kind of sour candy color, and I think it's just so fun. So I do have one more polish that I want to talk about, and that is basically my one non-recommendation, the one that I would say to stay away from. And if you're familiar with my channel, you already know what this is. This is Fata Morgana, and this was the biggest letdown that I've had from Cirque. I mean, to be honest, I've had a few and I will talk about those, but when it comes to their shimmers, because this is again like my favorite finish from them, this just looks absolutely nothing like the website photos that depict it to be this like really soft kind of lavender shade with this bright coppery shimmer. The shimmer is there. Obviously, it's just the base color where it's like this desaturated kind of shade. It probably is victim to that one purple pigment that just is known to fade that I talked about in my Best of Mooncat video with Curse of Calypso, and just any other kind of purple polishes that have faded over time. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the same pigment because this just looks gray. I don't necessarily think this is like an ugly polish necessarily. Like, it's a nice neutral with like a little bit of sparkle. It almost reminds me of Island Peace Flicker, honestly, but with like more hollow maybe. So, you know, there's a time and place for this color, but it's just extra disappointing when this is not the color I was expecting to get. And that just ties so well into the biggest issue with Cirque, is their over edited swatch photos. I feel like they've definitely been guilty of this for like a couple of years at least, but it was especially bad this year when it was the Jarritos collection that came out, which were the jellies, specifically the shade Piña Jelly, because it was a yellow that looked incredibly close to Mango Jelly that they already had. And to be clear, I've said this before, but I feel like there are some people who may have missed this or something. It's not that I have a total issue with photoshopping, because I can understand the need for some color correction. Obviously, there are some shades that are just going to be difficult to capture. I obviously have this issue, especially only recording on my phone, but I make an effort to tell you that this shade is not picking up color accurate. So I do recognize that there is a time and place for acceptable photoshopping. The problem with Cirque is that there was a swatcher who did a comparison post for them showing Mango and Piña next to each other. And in her own caption, she said that they are so close to each other that in real life, with her own eyes, she could not really tell them apart. The problem is that Cirque then reposted that photo and photoshopped the colors to make Piña, I think, look a bit lighter or more white base. It is absolutely wild to think that that is excusable, because they are just gaslighting not just the audience, but the swatcher, because she said, these look like how I could see them in real life, which is basically almost the same. And then Cirque was like, no, actually you're wrong. Piña is lighter. And it's like, that's crazy. I actually think they did Photoshop a couple of her other comparisons, but that was just like the most egregious one because of how similar Mango and Piña looked to begin with. So when it came to those two polishes specifically, there was just no need to Photoshop them because they just looked similar to each other. I did talk about emailing them and just kind of addressing this whole issue and encouraging them to apologize to their audience, because I feel like they just don't understand how upset people are, or just how much they are digging themselves into a hole that's just going to be harder for them to get out of, because I can only do so much. Obviously, I do my best when it comes to, you know, sharing the polishes and showing them as accurately as possible, and obviously being honest with how these polishes look. At some point, there is going to be a line that they cross that I'm just like, I'm tired of defending you guys, you know what I mean? I know some people probably think I'm crazy for not already getting to that point with them, because again, like, I've been burned by my own purchases with Cirque. I think it really is just me trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, because They are one of the earliest boutique brands that I fell in love with and really appreciated their brand values and them standing up for social injustices and being vocal about that as a brand. That stuff is really important to me, and I value them not being afraid to voice any of those opinions. So it just really sucks to see them like make these decisions that just hurt their image for no reason. So yeah, I'm sorry that I went on a little bit of a rant, very similar to last year's video, unfortunately. It really is unfortunate that this has kind of just become Cirque's track record, because I really think they have some really beautiful polishes, but admittedly, with how much competition there is out there with all these other brands, Cirque doesn't have that same kind of influence that they used to. But I do think there are still some standout shades that are worth the price, or at least getting on sale. So yeah, I'm sorry if this best of video was a little bit more negative compared to the other ones, but I feel like I just can't ignore the elephant in the room when it comes to Cirque. So hopefully you found this helpful. As a reminder, I have a ton of review videos on Cirque as well, so feel free to go through those to see what my honest opinions are on any of the other shades. Let me know if you're planning on getting anything from them this Black Friday, or just let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.